Hi everyone, welcome to Time to Talk, the second episode, hosted by Project Purple and COVID-19 PD. Throughout the series, we plan to bring on many guests and shed light on topics that we think need more focus on during these troubling times.
Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Nabeel Ashraf Ali. He is known as a social scientist with an academic and professional background in philosophy and public health. Mr. Ali worked with the ICDDR B for over a decade conducting public health research. Despite his academic and professional background, he feels the most comfortable in introducing himself as a social justice activist.
Thank you for joining us today, sir.
Thank you for
Let's move
inviting
forward
me,
to the
and
question.
let's begin.
So let's move forward to the questions. Firstly, why do you think most world governments weren't prepared, even though experts warned of such events such as the COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay, let me come to this question from a sort of a different angle. It seems, given the widespread every day we hear about these thousands and thousands of new cases that are being diagnosed every day. It seems like the world simply was not prepared, but I beg to differ. I am going to suggest that world was prepared. What does it take for a nation, for the world to be prepared? You need information. You need to know what sort of disease it is, and if it is contagious, what you need to do. What, say, there's in some remote village in Bangladesh. What is the health system is going to do about it? If they don't know what it is, they're going to report it to the next level up, and within the day, it is going to reach IEDCR, which is the basic core department of the government that deals with such disease outbreaks. So within a day, they would get to know that there is a contagious disease that is being reported in some area, in some village, in somewhere in the country. That's exactly how it is set up in just about each and every single country of the world. And for China, that is just even better, because China has faced a number of outbreaks in its history. As a matter of fact, if I'm sure many of you guys know what the last pandemic was about. The last pandemic was almost exactly 100 years ago. It is known as the influenza pandemic of 1918, and that happened during the First World War. Now, what happened then, we learned a lot from it. And since then, there has been a number of global organizations that deal with such outbreaks, and each country, they have their own way of responding to it. So there is a protocol in every country as to how they're going to deal with it. Information, we had a surveillance system, and we had experience. So given all of that, why will we say that we have been unprepared? Our governments have been unprepared. Just to let you know that the last, it wasn't called a pandemic, it was an epidemic. I'm referring to SARS that took place in 2002 to 2003, 4, something like that. During that time, that also originated in China, but not in the same province. And it went down to Taiwan, Hong Kong, and interestingly, skipped a whole bunch of countries in the middle and went to Canada. And also, some cases were reported from Singapore. Except China, all these 4 countries that experienced SARS in 2002 were prepared. All the other countries were prepared too, but these countries, they had a fresh memory of what it is like to be suddenly hit by an infectious disease that you do not have a cure for. So these 4 countries were quick to respond. they shut down their borders, they shut down all international travel, they started doing contact tracing, isolation, and quarantine. So look at the numbers of these four countries. You will see that they have done, they fared so much better than a whole lot of other countries. And countries, those who took their lead, they also did much better. Say South Korea took their lead, Australia, New Zealand, they were all like understanding the situation, not from their own experience, but from via the experiences of these other countries. So that's what it is about. Whether you act quickly or you are lackadaisical, you are lazy in thinking that, oh, maybe it won't hit us. No, what will happen if we go into a lockdown now, shut down everything? Oh my God, the economy is going to kill us. People are going to die anyway. All these other considerations, and in the back of your mind, you're thinking that somehow it's just going to pass you by. But there is no reason for you to be thinking that, you know. And we may come back to this later on, that just this idiotic thinking. I say idiotic because we knew we had that information, but still we considered economy before we considered lives. And at the end of the day, we are not able to save lives. And save lives nor the economy. You know, everything is suffering. But
Thank
we'll
you
come
so
back.
much for giving a completely different perspective of how we look at this pandemic.
Sir, moving on, there has been a lot of criticism of the Bangladesh government for their lack of testing and delaying of measures taken to tackle the pandemic. According to you, who is really to be blamed here, the government or our socio-economic structure?
It's interesting, the language of the question. You know, it's like it pushes me to blame someone, put the blame on someone. Will make me feel better that, you know, you are the one to be blamed. You know, you didn't do your job, and that's why we all are suffering. But I think this blame needs to be shared. This is something that we do not have a living memory of, in the sense that a pandemic of this scale, none of us was alive, you know, 100 years ago. So it's in a sense, this is new. Interestingly, Bangladesh has been extremely quick to respond.
Right.
The first few cases, 3 cases actually, were confirmed on 8th March, right?
Right.
And the country went into lockdown on the 26th March. So that's 18 days. So, and at that time, there was only 5 confirmed deaths related to COVID, and, you know, some 30, 40, 50 cases. You know, none of the countries, speaking, went into a lockdown with that sort of numbers in their hand, and that quickly. Now, given the current situation, this really it doesn't reflect the way that we responded with, that we were quick to respond to it and things like that. But why didn't it work? I think it didn't work because, like most things in Bangladesh, people are just kind of informal. You know, সব কিছুতেই আমরা কেমন জানি এরকম। হ্যাঁ, তুমি একটা জায়গায় পোস্ট অফিসে যাবা চিঠি পোস্ট করতে, তুমি একটা অফিসে যাবা কোনো একটা কাজ করতে, সবকিছুই যেন একটু ঢিলা ঢালা, সবকিছু একটু কেমন জানি, হ্যাঁ, একটু মাথায় হাত বুলাই দিতে হয় কাজ করার জন্য, প্লিজ একটু তাড়াতাড়ি করেন, মানে সবকিছুই এরকম। তো মহামারী হবে, এরকম একটা প্যান্ডেমিক হবে, তারপরও মানুষ নড়বে না, এটা একটা সমস্যা, এটা একটা বিশাল সমস্যা। Now, why do I say this? আমাদের health system, to begin with, given the experience that we had from China at that time, that critical care is required, even for a tiny bit, even if it is, say, 1% of the people requiring ICU care, that translates into a huge number if you think of in absolute terms. Like 100 জনে মাত্র একজন হবে, 1000 জনে কিন্তু সেটা 10 জন হয়ে যাবে, 1 লাখ হয়ে গেলে সেটা 100 জন হয়ে যাবে, and 10 লাখ হয়ে গেলে সেটা 1000 হয়ে যাবে। হ্যাঁ, এরকম করে। আর আমাদের দেশ তো 170 million, right? And this contagious disease, this is going to go to, just go everywhere. And if that happens, we will have millions dead, right? So that sort of seriousness didn't get to us initially. So what happened is, like, our first line of defense broke. And when that happens, first line of defense, what is the first line of defense? The first line of defense are our borders, like our airports and our land borders and our seaports. These are our first line of defense. If we cannot be strict there, then we have already lost the battle, because our health system is not going to be able to handle it anyway. Karon, say COVID wasn't there, this pandemic wasn't there, what was the situation like in terms of ICU care? Were all the people being able to avail that care? No, it was already overwhelmed. We were already underserved. Our ICU care was already well below what we needed for just about any other normal other diseases that we had. So on top of that, we have COVID, which is a respiratory illness that attacks the lungs, where ICU care becomes essential for people, those who become serious, right? So health system was not going to be able to handle it. That's a given. So for us, the main thing was to be able to prevent it to become an epidemic in our country. And when we failed that there, we really had not much else to do. Other, I know, I'm pretty certain that we will talk about lockdowns later on, and I will comment on the lockdown. But given the nature of the people that we have, the population and the population density and the informal sector job market, all of that put together, it's almost we're asking for an impossibility to stop the pandemic from becoming a pandemic.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. So moving on to another question, we have all seen a lot of speculation related to how useful a lockdown is in Bangladesh. So as you know, Bangladesh has given out some lockdown protocols are being broken by the general public. So according to you, how effective is the idea of a lockdown, turning red zone, yellow zone, and green zone right now?
Okay. Say, why, to begin with, why should there be a lockdown? What does lockdowns do? Lockdowns are not vaccines, right? They're not going to cure anybody. They're not going to make the sick people become healthy. This is not a medical intervention, right? It's a public health intervention. Why? Because you don't want the disease to spread. So you want to stop the spread, right? Okay. Now, the interesting thing is, say you get infected today, but you don't know. It's going to take from 2 to 14 days for you to show the symptoms, right? Say you show the symptom on your 13th day of being infected, and then you are sick. And from your sickness to recovery or death, unfortunately, that is what? Maybe 27 or 28 days it takes. So 27, 28 days plus the preceding 2 weeks that it took for you to get sick. 4, 5, 6 weeks. So in terms of days, you have 45 days to deal with, from infection to its end, right? So theoretically, if you can lock down the country entirely, no movement whatsoever, no working, no factories, no offices, no games, no concerts, no namaz, no jamats, no political movements, none of that, right? If you can enforce that with force for 45 days, you will actually kill the virus. Eventually, it will be gone, theoretically speaking. But that's not going to happen. That is unrealistic. That's not human. Why am I saying that? Look around the world. Look everywhere. Say, in Italy, which is part of the so-called first world, developed world, right? With a health system that is an example in the European countries, basically the world. Even there, when the outbreak took place around Lombardy, which is in the north, they decided that they're going to cut off all sorts of communication and movement from the south. So they created a barrier in the middle so that people from the north cannot go into the south or vice versa. Now, before they implemented it, somehow the news that it was going to be locked down from tomorrow leaked. And there was this tidal wave of people trying to escape northern areas and moving into south. That's what they did. They wanted to escape that. Something similar happened in Bangladesh. We are saying, I included, am extremely critical of the fact that when government announced lockdowns, they did not use this term lockdown. They called it sadharon chuti. And আমাদের কারোর মেমোরিতে নাই কোন দিন কবে আমরা 15 দিন, ফার্স্টে তো 2 সপ্তাহ ছিল, 15 দিনের একটানা ছুটি কে কবে পাইছে? Nobody. So when they heard 15 দিনের সাধারণ ছুটি, first thing in their mind was যে বাড়ি যাব, লঞ্চে যাব, মানে বাসে যাব, গাড়িতে যাব, যেখানে যাব বাড়ি যাব, মানে ছুটি equals বাড়ি। That's সাধারণ কথা। আমি বললাম, right, and maybe they did not want to create panic and so on and so forth, but a lot of people, including us, we have been saying from day one that actually this is a time when you need to create panic. It is a time that you need to create panic. You need to create fear. This is not about সাধারণভাবে আমরা বসে চিন্তা করব, আচ্ছা সাধারণভাবে যে হাঁটাচলা করব. That doesn't work. In a situation where we are dealing with contagious diseases, it doesn't work like that. If you also in this relation, you might want to look up various countries, how they dealt with it and stuff like that. You will see that countries that are authoritarian, like China, like Vietnam, they did it very well because they can. If they say you don't move, people don't move because they know that they will face consequences that are extremely tough. And on the other hand, countries like United States and UK, these democratic nations, had all kinds of problems dealing with this. They're asking people to stay home, but no, people are thinking, no, it's time to party. You know, party at ground zero, party during COVID, rave concerts during COVID, all these strange ideas, and people think they're cool and whatnot. So basically, what I'm saying is that too much freedom is also not good all the time if people are not responsible. But I'm not advocating for strict government control or things of that nature. But what I'm saying is, এরকম ব্ল্যাঙ্কেট ভাবে কোনো কিছু বলে দেওয়া যায় না।
Government needed to be strict, but একটু reluctant ছিল these nature.
হ্যাঁ, and এই লকডাউন আমাদের দেশে মনে মনে সবাই বলতেছে লকডাউন লকডাউন লকডাউন, এবং মানে what is interesting is this: now we already have enough data to suggest that এই যে আধা খেচড়া যেই লকডাউন হয়েছে আমাদের, এটার ইম্প্যাক্ট কিন্তু ছিল ভালো ভালো ইম্প্যাক্ট ছিল, অনেক ইনফেকশন আমরা কমাতে পারছি, given despite the fact যে মাঝখানে দুইটা বেশ মেজর সমস্যা হয়েছে। একটা হচ্ছে গার্মেন্টস এর কারণে, হ্যাঁ, গার্মেন্টস এর ছুটি দিয়ে দিল, চলে গেল, আবার বললো যে খুলে দিবে, তোরা আবার চলে আসতে আরম্ভ করলো। হ্যাঁ, এদিকে আবার ব্রাহ্মণবাড়িতে হলো এক লাখ লাখ মানুষের জানাজা। হ্যাঁ, তো এইগুলো সত্ত্বেও যে লকডাউন আমাদের হয়েছে, সেই লকডাউনে কিন্তু আমরা ইনফেকশন অনেকখানি কন্ট্রোল করছি, অনেকখানি কমায় আনতে পারছি। বাট এই অনেকখানি কমায় আনতে পারা হয় কি, মানে ইউ মাস্ট হ্যাভ হার্ড বাই নাও মেনি টাইমস ফ্ল্যাটনিং দ্য কার্ভ। হোয়াট হ্যাপেন্স ইজ ইনফেকশন রেট উঠতে থাকে, হ্যাঁ উঠতে থাকে, তখন তুমি ইন্টারভেনশনস গুলো নিলে ওটা ওইরকম ভাবে না যে এটা স্লোপটা লম্বা হয়ে যায়, নিচু হয়ে যায়, but that doesn't mean that it's going to go out. It's going to stay on for a longer period. Instead of just going up and coming down sharp, it will slowly go down.
Right.
That's what happens.
The hospitals,
but that helps the health system to cope with it, because you will have less infection and you will have less sick people coming to the hospital. So again, going back to the lockdown point, if we can lock down the country for 45 days strictly, we will be able to do some good. But if we do it like now we are planning on the red zone and the green zone and the yellow zone, this will also have an impact, but this will not cut it. This will not cut it. And even that, most likely that is the reason why they are not implementing it, because I'm not too sure they are convinced that this is going to be of any use.
Thank you, sir. Sir, amidst all the rumors and hoaxes in social media regarding medication and vaccines for treating the coronavirus, when do you think will we find an effective vaccine against the virus, and what will the new normal be like till then?
Okay, interesting question. Given the history of vaccines, it takes a long time. It takes a long, very long time for vaccines to come around. 10 years, 8 years, 12 years, these are what our experiences tell us. As a matter of fact, SARS came around in 2002. We didn't have a vaccine for that. Flu that killed about 50 million people. 50 million people, by the way. Keep that in mind. 50 million people perished in 2 to 3 years, from 1918 to 1921. Okay, that was the influenza pandemic. We do have vaccines for that, but it's a very interesting vaccine. You have to change the strain every year. So what they do is they sort of assume what sort of to take place in the next year, and based on that assumption, they produce the vaccines. Most of the time, it hits the spot, it works. But a lot of times, it just doesn't. Okay, so that is a given, that it's a hit or miss type of thing. But what has interestingly that has transpired this time around, that the global scientific community has come together in an unprecedented sort of way, and they are working right now. They're like promising candidates, like at least 8 very promising candidates for vaccines right now. And if all goes well, the world can expect to have a vaccine by early next year, right?
Right.
Now, this is based on a number of eventualities that, okay, some one or two candidates will go on the third phase of trial next month in the United States, and then there are Oxford is doing one, and Hopkins is doing a couple, CD is doing one, but together they all have to pass through those 3 stages of vaccine trials in order for them to be, মানুষের জন্য applicable, right? They have worked in laboratory animals, they have worked in first 10 or 15 people, but whether they will work en masse, that needs to be tested out, and that is what takes the most of the time. Now, the fact that all of the scientific community has come together is the sign of hope is all about in this case. Like, for instance, whole lot of things where time is usually wasted is, say, a vaccine is developed, and then you will have to produce it in millions. So you need a factory for that. And then which countries will get it first, and how will it be distributed,
We'll
is a whole
technically have
chain
a
of
wire
events.
on the production of the vaccines and the distribution
Right.
of the vaccines.
And that takes up a lot of time, sometimes years. Now, in order to cut these like windows, say the Gates Foundation, Bill Gates's foundation, they have prepared 8 factories already. So if they are not even sure whether all of these factories will even come to use, but since they are not certain which vaccine is going to get the final green light, they have prepared the factory for all 8, and they know 6 or 7 will just be wasted. Some $1 billion will be wasted, but they have calculated and they have said that it's better to waste those billions than suffer later on. So that's a huge contribution from that foundation. And then there is Global Alliance for Vaccination, that's called Gavi. And this Gavi is a global alliance which basically serves the purposes of countries like us, the developing countries. And we have already, in last 15 to 20 years, we have developed a very good network of vaccinations. So our vaccination program is extremely good. So one public health program that is just awesome in Bangladesh. So we can hope that it will not be too long after the vaccine has been discovered, finalized, that we get it as well. So there are a number of good things happening in that sector. And just as a funny anecdote, during pandemic, just like the disease itself, hoaxes and stupid experts, ফেসবুক এক্সপার্টস অ্যান্ড ওদের সংখ্যাও ওই মহামারীর মতো করে বাড়তে থাকে। হ্যাঁ, কেউ এসে বলবে যে পানি পড়া খাও, আর কেউ এসে বলবে আরো কিছু একটা, তো এসব চলতে থাকবে। So we just have to be judicious and not go and listen to all that people have to talk about. But new normal, right? That was part of your question in this case.
Yes.
As we know, this is a virus, so vaccination is what is going to save us. And what else? The lockdowns that have not proven to be quite as good as because we couldn't implement it the way it needed to be implemented. But there is a lot of research done, and there's a lot of evidence for masks. Masks work. If I wear mask, if you wear mask, we protect each other, and this really works. And this আমাদের এখানে কিন্তু স্বাস্থ্যবিধিতে বলে দেওয়া হয়েছে যে mask is compulsory when you go outside of your house. It's
So
not
it's
forced.
written down যে এখন আমরা mask পরে না বের হই তাহলে
It's as a policy it's written down, but it needs to be enforced. মানে আমি personally তো বাসা থেকে খুব কম বের হই.
Policy is written down, but they're not usually enforced.
Right, that's the story of our lives. Sad, but that is the case. That is what you guys need to be vocal about. That is what you guys need to be like screaming and shouting and making noise about. Follow the hashtag mask for all. Follow it. A lot of things out there, and share the news, spread the news. It's a okay. Let me illustrate this in a funny sort of way. Say, there are two naked individuals, two guys naked, and feels like pissing, so he pisses on the other person, right? There's no protection, no nothing. He gets wet. Now imagine this other guy who was naked, who got pissed on, was wearing pants and shirts and whatnot. If he gets pissed on, he will still get wet, but maybe most of the wetness will remain on his clothes, right? But now imagine the guy who pissed was wearing pants himself. And then if he pissed, he would only wet himself. He wouldn't wet the other guy, right? So it's just like that. It really is like that. If both of us are wearing masks, we can reduce the possibility of being infected drastically, if not like really 100%. So new normal to me is that we have to go out, we have to earn money, we have to go to the hospital, we have to go for diagnostic tests, we have to buy food to survive, we have to sometimes go take money out of the ATM machine or something, and or even visit a bank, or there could be a whole list of essentials that we need to perform. But if we all do it with the mask on, I think we will do a lot of good to ourselves. And so new normal to me is wearing mask. That's what it is.
Thank you, sir. In your opinion, after this pandemic comes to close, because we're learning a lot about the pandemic as we're going through it, however long that may be, what should be the first step we as a global community take so that we are better prepared for the next pandemic?
Information sharing, so that you don't become like what China wanted to do initially. China, I won't blame China wholly, but China is to be blamed in a lot of sort of ways, in a very crucial sort of ways, because they tried to contain the information. They always do. That's the kind of government they are. Whatever happens, they don't let the world know what happens. It happens all the time. It happened during SARS as well. But look how they controlled it. They controlled it in a very strict way, something that is not possible for the other countries to do. If you want to find out what Wuhan is like, what the city is like, go check out some of the pictures. Futuristic city. It's amazing that how can a city of that ginormous proportion can be blocked off from the rest of the world. But they did it. But
Only
see,
possible.
that's only possible in China. I've heard of people, those who live in those 30-40 story apartment complexes, and when the lockdown was declared, police came and sealed the collapsible gates of their apartment complexes. People couldn't go out even if they wanted to. See, that's the kind of government they are. They can do it. not face public wrath because public don't have a voice. So I'm not advocating that, but it helps in situations like a pandemic.
Definitely. Thank you, sir.
The COVID-19.
So, oh, by the way, so to respond to your question, what should the world do next time around? I think the main thing is about information sharing. The protocols are already there. Like I was saying initially in the beginning of the discussion, the protocols are there. What one nation needs to do when something like this happens, but this needs to be made transparent. This needs to be talked about more and more and more. And if countries like United States keep on blaming WHO and get out of WHO and idiotic things like that, then we have major problems. Then we will keep on having problems. And if we, stupidly elect people like Donald Trump, well, we face the consequences.
True.
Sir, moving on, the COVID-19 pandemic has shed light on the global inequality between countries. What is your say on that?
It goes without saying. Whenever something like a calamity, natural calamity happens, the less resourced, the poor, the marginalized will face the brunt of it all. That's the sad reality. During the calamity, during the pandemic, and after it, they will be the ones, those who are affected the most. Given the fact that if you are poor, if you are less resourced, you'll be living in more congested areas, right, where there will be lots of people around you. If you're rich, then you can afford a larger area with less people around you, right? So that's the unfortunate reality. So to this, I think we, as concerned citizens and activists of the world, we need to voice our say, opinion. Health is not a privilege. Health needs to be a right. Health belongs to everybody, rich or poor. And in some sense, this pandemic has a weird way of showing that. A lot of politicians, rich politicians, are being infected and dying. And so think, all these people otherwise would just hop on an airplane and go to Singapore to
Treatment.
now they can. Borders are closed. If you have money, that's an interesting way of showing that money always doesn't help. But generally speaking, health needs to be right, and we need to be able to demand it. So that should be the way to go.
Thank you, sir. As you can see, a lot of countries have opened their countries with safety measures. Do you think it is the right time for the world to open up, or should a country further reopen their economies?
Um, you see, recession, joblessness, economic downturn of the likes of the 19 influenza pandemic, all of these things indicate that the inclination is toward opening up and not toward closing it down. People are, fearing that there is going to be severe economic down, and recession is going to hit, and there's already what 30-40 million people jobless in United States.
Yeah.
And things of that nature is going to start happening in Europe, and UK still hasn't faced the economic side of the Brexit that they were so bent on happening. But that's going to hit them pretty soon, next year. Coming January, they're going to face both the economic effect of the pandemic and also Brexit. So, and countries like us, we are so dependent on informal sector, and people, those who bring money from foreign countries, all of this is going to be affected and is already affected. So it seems like all the governments want to open up because they just don't know other would handle the economic part of it all. And so I think that's just going to happen whether we like it or not. And since most of the countries have been very lazy in their response, now it will make very little difference if lockdowns were installed now, because it's already everywhere in the society. um, so embracing the new normal, and as much as possible becoming aware of all the hygiene practices that are being talked about. So that's what I think is going to be.
Thank you, sir.
So earlier on, you said that Bangladesh has a population of 170 million, which is true, and it's one of the most densely populated countries in the world. How unprepared are we to battle a future pandemic in case it comes after we learn from this current pandemic?
Okay. Like I said, for a country with the kind of economy that we have and the kind of health system that we have, with its capacity, we simply cannot think of curing and dealing with it after it's already taken an epidemic proportion. We have to think in terms of prevention. So the first line of defense, we cannot be lazy on that. So our surveillance has to be at par. We have to be strict at the borders, and some other time we can have an informal discussion once again, and actually draw it out for you, that how strict border control could have saved us from this pandemic. It's so simple, but yet so hard, given the very informal nature of how things take place in there. Right? Because this is another part of it too. Since we are talking about this, China reported something in February, but most likely, if it just started spreading somewhere at the end of November the previous year, I believe. And Wuhan and Bangladesh has a very good traveling relationship. There's lots of business over there. People have been coming and going since long time. And so to say that the first cases were identified on March the 8th is to just say that that's when we identified it, but it was already in community transmission well before that. So that's reality. So do in the future, well, I know this is part of economics, but we will have to increase our share of budget in terms of health and health education. We will have to increase the number of nurses. The standard ratio of nurses is, for every doctor, every physician, there needs to be 3 nurses. In our country, it's exactly the opposite. For 1 doctor, there's like 0.3 nurses, or for every 3 doctor, there's 1. That's just lopsided. We need to increase the number of nurses here. Imagine in a situation like, it's not the physicians those who would come to use. It's the trained nurses who would be able to tackle what needs to be done in being able to handle future pandemics or things of that nature. We need more nurse support. We need more critical care capacity like we need more ICUs and things of that nature. But most importantly, nurses and public health facilities need to be more aware, and they should be able to do more awareness raising campaigns and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, it will boil down to how much money we allocate in the budget. And the budget allocation this year has increased from last, but I don't think it's adequate. You might want to talk to economists. They would say things more in greater detail.
Thank you, sir. We have come towards the end of our episode. Thank you, sir, for answering all our questions. It's truly been a pleasure having an expert analysis on the issues related to the pandemic.
That's all the questions for the episode. Before ending, we would like to shed light on Project Purple, which is the host of this show. Project Purple is an online platform that enables people to share their own stories in battling problems, especially related to mental health. Hence, we would like to encourage any viewer who is struggling through problems such as depression, anxiety, or other mental health problems to check out our website. And sometimes even a stranger can have the answer to your problem.
That is awesome to know. That is awesome to know. I just want to add a little thing that you might want to do a little episode on this COVID pandemic and mental health, because I know for sure that this is going to, or if not, is already having a huge toll on mental health.
Right. As a matter of fact, we're working on mental health, and we are doing episodes basically related to mental health. Thank you, sir. To all our viewers, I hope this episode has helped you learn about the certain aspects of the world due to the COVID-19 and its impact. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time. Till then, stay safe.
ভালো থাকো সবাই। Bye bye.